Next up is Lewis Bassett. He's decarbonisation and sustainability manager at the CPA, the Construction Plant Hire Association. He's going to talk about end user perspective, the realities of non-road machinery decarbonisation, and Lewis is to blame for the London low emission zone. Well, not quite, but had a lot of experience. So over to you. Thanks, Lewis.
Thanks very much, and for making sure that I get the blame on the London emission zone as well. End user perspectives. Again, we're a hire association, so we represent about 2,000 businesses and hire companies in the UK specifically. So a lot of my stuff is going to be UK specific. Sorry, another embarrassing thing of doing European conferences, as well as that. I think everyone in the room probably speaks better English than I do. So yeah, from South London, we don't use G's, H's and T's. You don't need them. So yeah, we're the largest UK trade association for hired equipment. It's 2,000 members. We think this is approximately 85% of the hired equipment in the UK. Hire also makes up about two-thirds of the construction equipment, so it's about sort of 60-65% of all the construction equipment in the UK. We're basically the voice of plant hire, so we do the government lobbying and the sort of trying to improve standards and minimum levels of safety and things across the industry. All the stuff that the members generally don't have the time to do, because construction is made up of quite a lot of small businesses rather than a few big ones. We recently published a report with Oxford Economics on the size and scale of the hire sector in the UK. So it's about £14 billion and 191,500 jobs that are in the UK plant hire economy. I'm the decarbonisation and sustainability manager and only a year into the job. So it's a new role for the CPA. We've not been especially active in these sorts of forums historically, but that is changing. I'm not actually from a carbon background, so I hate carbon reporting as much as everyone else. And it's a new learning curve for me. I started out actually in extreme cleaning with lots of stories, from crime and trauma scenes to fish shop ducting systems. So fell into non-road mobile machinery and the low emission zone, as Alex says. So worked on that for about 8 years, covering 450 sites. So I've got the regulator perspective, the site manager perspective, and the plant hire perspective. So a bit of a mishmash of jack of all trades. And led on supplier engagements. I've been working with suppliers for probably about 6 years now. So the UK hire market is mostly hired. The UK construction equipment market is mostly hired. So about 67% of machinery is hired. That's actually increasing. So recent estimates are as high as 75%. So that's going up. Hiring avoids financial risks in uncertain times, which we certainly live in. So that is why we suspect hire is getting more popular, to avoid financial risk. But the hire market is not really designed for these new approaches, because we sell fuel. So the fuel savings in TCO calculations, that doesn't apply to hirers. So the TCO models, we need to think about those differently in the hire sector. We've got terrible access to grid in the UK. It's an absolute nightmare to get a grid connection. Trying to even understand the process for getting a grid connection in the UK, it feels like it requires a master's degree in the language of national grid. I have been desperately trying but unable to get my head around most of it. And we've got very high energy costs, so some of the highest on the planet. So our electrons are the most expensive. Most machinery is bought with finance. We normally don't buy it with cash. We borrow the money. So it's not just ourselves that we have to convince of the business case. It is also the lenders. There are some schemes that could be introduced that are applied elsewhere in the UK, but not actually to construction machinery at the moment, where there are sort of guarantees on particular low emission kit, for example. They could provide a guarantee on the borrowing if there's in case of a default on the payments. That doesn't currently apply. Resale value is extremely important, so we don't actually make a lot of money when we're hiring the equipment out, and it is most of the cash flow is going to come from when we sell that machine when we're finished with it. We usually sell off to unregulated territories when we're done with a machine. Those unregulated territories do not have much of a desire for hydrogen or electric at the moment, so that's a big question mark over the business model as well. The UK businesses are being absolutely decimated at the moment by recent tax reforms, which we're hoping will be reversed. But small businesses, family-run businesses, the inheritance tax laws, everything is very, very tight at the moment and uncertain. We don't get any tax relief when we buy the machines either, generally. There's different rules for if you're hiring a bums on seats plant, we call it, so diggers, forklifts, versus if you're compressors and generators that don't require an operator. And we have cross-hiring, so we will hire off another hire company to rehire to someone else. So that it gets very complicated, and we don't always qualify for full expensing. So all of this put together, the UK Climate Change Committee has said there is currently no plan or policy to incentivise decarbonisation of non-road mobile machinery. So that just sort of sets the background for the environment that we're trying to push these technologies in. No CSRD requirements though. So thanks for the one good thing that came out of Brexit. But on the reporting side, I think it's important to note that a lot of, from my personal experience of the reporting and measuring that I've seen, most companies' values are actually going up in their reporting. So it's, the world's in trouble. It's heating up. It's making, it's going to make everyone's lives hell. So we're just going to measure it. So I think, personally, I'd like to see more of a focus on the actual practical, adoption of cleaner practices rather than the measuring side. So what do we think of net zero? Here's a picture of Ed Miliband, our resident environmentalist politician, holding the amount of emissions that he's going to allow in the UK from 2050. So what do plant hirers think of net zero? Unlikely. You wanted an end user perspective. This is what you get. Unlikely. There's lots of huge challenges to overcome, which has been discussed in detail by the other speakers. It's decades away. So we're in a sector where we get a call on a Sunday night that says we want a machine delivered on a Monday morning. We are not worried about what's going to happen in 20 years' time. We are looking at today, tomorrow, maybe the day after. Progress is possible, so there are diesel reductions, but often the political narrative is that they're not good enough. We need absolute zero. So this sort of vilifies all of the bridging technologies on the way to what may be eventually possible in many decades to come. We've got air quality initiatives. So this is Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London. So their low emission zone, which Matt's covered earlier in his talk, that is just focused on EU emission stage of the engines. So it's nothing to do with carbon, fuel consumption, hybrid, HVO, doesn't cover any of that. So there's conflicting asks from different regions. It's often put to the industry to say, right, well, the government have said they want this, the EU Commission have said they want net zero. It's now up to industry to sort it out. I didn't make that promise. So, they promised net zero, and they probably should have done a bit more homework. So it's not, it shouldn't be a burden that is just passed on to industry. They need, the authorities need to create the environments to promote this stuff and make it easier to get out on site. It's built on promises from politicians which mean nothing. So when we're talking about certainty, no guarantees at all there. I don't think if a politician, if Sir Keir Starmer walked into the offices of some of our members and said, right, on this day I'm going to do a certain thing, it wouldn't make any difference at all. We wouldn't believe it until, once we get the phone calls, then we'll start ordering the machines, but we don't get the phone calls. It's a legal requirement, is it? I've tried to look into this, and this is a genuine question because I don't actually know the answer. But it doesn't look like there are any consequences for not complying with net zero. I don't think anybody goes to prison. So I don't know, is it really a legal requirement? Are these people still going to be in power in 2050? A lot can happen in 25 years. Things could change. What offers more certainty? Again, a genuine question. Is it actual support for stuff that you are producing today, or is it promises to support something that you're going to produce in 25 years' time? Personally, I'd go with the former. So just to quickly fly through some very overview of various technologies. So HVO in the UK, there's no domestic production, so that's not good. Slight increase in fuel cost, but not a huge amount. Still limited uptake, so I think we was talking about 5 cents more a litre, and already no. So then when you start to talk about other technologies that cost 3 times as much, you got no chance. HVO is currently at 1% of the UK fuel supply, and we are already banning certain suppliers because we are worried about anti-dumping, we are worried about the sustainability of these fuels. We are starting to come against massive increases in cost now. The cost of HVO is starting to really shoot up. So we're sort of hitting supply ceilings, and we're at 1%. We have got another 93% of the fossil fuels that we use in the country to go. So it's always going to be a minority. HVO is not going to replace 40% of the diesel that we use today. And air quality. So there's still air quality emissions, so not good enough. Biodiesel, B20 to B100, quite similar, although you can have domestic feedstocks. The main issue here is warranties, so engine warranties. If it's different from using HVO or diesel. The engines do not always agree with it. Injection systems, so this is being tested at the moment by various manufacturers, and we're waiting to hear what their results are and whether they're happy with it. Again, from the political perspective, there's air quality emissions, so not good enough. Hydrogen combustion, so low emission without lithium or AdBlue. So I think people today have been speaking about the SCR systems on there. From a personal viewpoint, I think if we can get stage 5 emission levels without using AdBlue and increasing levels of ammonia, which is starting to become more noticeable in background levels in cities, so London, where we've got low emission zones, there is much more AdBlue being used now, and starting to pick up background levels of ammonia, which is not good. So if we can do that same level of emissions but without ammonia, that would be handy. It's transportable, so you don't have to have a grid connection. You can move the fuel to the machine. Might have resale potential. This is another 50-50 one. I'm not quite sure how that would look, but it is a gas engine, and people do use gas engines all over the globe, so there may be some resale potential there. Can be homegrown. You need a lot of energy to do it, but it can be done. And green is absolutely extortionate at the moment. People are trying to get the price of that down. Typical prices are often quoted to me between £40 and £100 per kilo, with a few people being able to get that down to sort of 20 and around the 20 mark. High energy density which is often flagged, but very low energy density in practice because you're at 350 to 700 bar. So the equivalent of a 1,000 litre diesel tank, very small, 1 metre square, would be 7.5 cubic metres at 700 bar, roughly. So you need a lot of space for it, and that means more frequent refills. You can liquefy it and put it back into ammonia, but then we're back into the ammonia problems. So we think that's probably only going to be a solution for the maritime sector. You're not going to be able to get permission to use ammonia in a town centre for an excavator. And again, not good enough. And bizarrely, London have actually decided they're going to ban hydrogen ice from 1st of January 2040. So thanks, mate. Hydrogen fuel cell, it does have a place, but there are limited use cases. It doesn't like dust, doesn't like vibration. Again, it's quite expensive. You often have to combine it with battery. I'm probably teaching people to suck eggs here, but yeah, the fuel cells don't like big changes in power demand, so you often have to pair it with a battery so that the battery can take the peaks and troughs. Renewable transport fuel certificates, not available in the UK for fuel cell NRMM. So again, thank you very much for, this was actually specifically excluded from the legislation. So we are trying to pressure government to change that so that we can have more incentives for selling hydrogen into the off-road sector. But again, the environment in which we're in is not working in our favour. But it does tick the air quality and carbon boxes on a political spectrum, so it gets the green light from government. Electric, you need a grid connection. As I've said, they're very difficult, high energy costs. They cost about £1 per watt to install a temporary grid connection on a construction site. So if you need a 1 megawatt connection, that's £1 million before you've even put a shovel in the ground. Connections are often late, so you normally don't get a connection until sort of 18 months into the build, by the time the paperwork's all done, by which time most of the earthworks is finished. So you're sort of now on smaller machines or concrete pumping. Charging infrastructure, you don't just need the grid connection, you also need a charger. You also need to run cables. So that's something that has to be thought about, particularly on big sites. How can you run the cable 4.7 miles? No. So that's when we're starting to look at battery systems and taxiing electricity on large sites. The infrastructure is temporary, so once you're done with that grid connection, you demolish the substation, you cut the cable off, and you leave however many kilograms of copper in the ground, and then go and do it again somewhere else. So it's not a particularly sustainable way of doing things either. So I think the gold standard really is actually having a small grid connection that is buffered by a battery pack, which can then move from site to site. That way you're leaving less cable in the ground. It might be something that actually the building needs that supply, so it will be something that the building takes over once the works are done. Advertised battery run times are pretty useless. Kilowatt hours is sometimes helpful, but it depends what you're doing. So if you're breaking concrete, the usage hours are going to be very different for if you're lorry loading. So we don't really pay much attention to those. The cost to buy is currently quite high. Generally, we're leasing. Not always. There are some that have been purchased, but electric machines are generally leased, especially the large stuff. Resale value is uncertain, as I've covered. There is a maintenance saving for us, so that does apply to the hirer, so that's good. Which countries are doing well and why? Well, it's the ones that have got the 50% subsidies and have control of the lithium generally. So it's we can't expect to achieve the same level of uptake with no subsidies at all. Also, I don't think the UK have thought about what they're going to replace diesel tax receipts with. So that's actually a very significant source of income for the government that won't be there anymore. You can't really tax electricity in the same way. So that's another sort of warning sign for them. But it does tick the air quality and carbon boxes for them again, so green light from government. There are some good use cases. So I don't want to badmouth all electric equipment. It's they're as long as you have the charging infrastructure in place, the right customer, the right application, then it can work. And things like, I don't want to, there are other models available, but rollers, electric rollers, they're quite good because you don't really use rollers for long hours. They're not intense use machines. So they can work, and you could slow charge them overnight. You don't need a fast charging column and all the complexities that come with those large grid connections. Hybrid is one of my favourites, so there's various combinations. You've got diesel, battery, energy recovery, plug-in, hydrogen hybrids. There's a lot of variety here. So I just wanted to flag a few. So solar hybrid lighting, give us an excuse not to use that. I mean, you could use that in a tunnel. You won't get anything from the solar, but it's still a small diesel engine with a battery backup, so it still operates as a hybrid, still reduces fuel consumption. So it's a bit of a no-brainer. The battery energy storage systems that I've mentioned that you can use to buffer grid, that's another good one. You can connect it with a generator, you can connect it to a grid to make your 70 kVA grid connection go a lot further. And then a really good versatile one is the City Boy crane we've got there, which one of our members has. And that's a hybrid that can be plug-in if they've got the connection on site. It can run on battery if they don't. And it's got a diesel generator in it for driving, and that will recharge the battery so that you can run the engine for sort of 3 hours and then operate the rest of the day on electric. So no matter what customer you've got, it can move around, and that's what we want in the hire market. We don't want a machine that can only be used in one deployment. We want it to be able to go to that site, then that site, then that site, then that site. We need it to be versatile. So it's not zero, but it's good progress. These can cut your emissions significantly, both carbon and air quality. Not good enough. Still diesel. So doesn't get the green light from government, not really any support for it. Very quickly, there's some others that are not really sort of in the market widely at the moment, but biomethane looks like it will be quite good. Maybe carbon positive. Again, air quality emissions, not good enough. Synthetic fuels, not commercially available to my knowledge. I might be wrong, but I think that's still the case. Very expensive, but very practical. It's basically just diesel, but without the carbon negatives. But again, it's still got local emissions, so from a government perspective, not good enough. So what do we think needs to happen? Well, firstly, I think we need a narrative change. I think progress is not the perfection should not be the enemy of progress. We do need to start looking at reducing diesel consumption, because while we sit here waiting for perfection, then nothing's happening. We're still burning 1 billion litres a year in the UK. But we also need to stay in business, so we need the options to make commercial sense. We need to be honest and realistic. So Alex mentioned before about there's lots of marketing material out there that might tell you that the machine works upside down on the moon, back to front, 400 hours a day. We can't be saying things like that, because then when that doesn't happen, when it goes out to site and that doesn't happen, then it just destroys the reputation of the whole movement. And it also sends the wrong message to government. If they then force everybody to use something that isn't actually going to work in the way that it's been marketed, then you're going to damage the sector. If it's not going to be productive, if it's not going to work on site, then it's going to slow sites down. And less construction is bad for everybody in this room. We need a holistic approach to air quality and carbon as well. The idea of banning hydrogen combustion because it's still got a slight element of NOx, to me, is preposterous. I think we need to be able to accept things that are good all round and not focus tunnel vision on one column of perfection. So there's no silver bullet for rapid uptake. I think everyone's sort of acknowledged that. Focusing on scaling solutions that are commercially viable today is our focus. We're trying to get government to focus on those applications that make commercial sense already, and we're having some success with that. The UK government is becoming more receptive, so we have some plans around power management and diesel generators in particular, because they are especially polluting. They're normally oversized and underloaded, so running very inefficiently. So we have managed to get them to focus on specific technologies or specific applications, specific machine types on specific sites. So that's been positive, and I think that's the sort of angle that we're going to try and continue with. And we need to fill the knowledge gap in public sector and procurement. So they need to understand when they're having the wool pulled over their eyes. They need to understand what the different options are. We're in an environment where somebody could submit a bid for a project and say, we're going to save 1 million tonnes of CO2 by building a green wall. And someone else will say, we're going to save 10,000 tonnes of CO2 by using a diesel hybrid plug-in piling rig. And the person that's reading those tenders doesn't always understand that might not be the case. So we don't want, the cost of the diesel hybrid is going to be a lot higher than planting a green wall. And we don't want that disparity to start appearing. We want them to be able to analyse and understand exactly what carbon savings they're going to get out of the different things that are proposed in work tenders. Lots of little steps and not one giant leap. So the analogy that I've got for this is we're at a bus stop, we're waiting for the net zero bus. We don't know if it's going to turn up. If it does, great, we're going to get to our net zero meeting on time, but if it doesn't, we're still going to be stood here in several hours. So we need to start moving. And if we start walking, we might get there late, but at least we'll be heading in the right direction. And it's just less risky. We won't then be sat here in 20 years still using exactly the same amount of diesel because we was waiting for a day when you can power engines on water and rainbows. So that's me. That's my rant, which I hope has set others up for some good details.
Yeah, great, thanks, Lewis. We did have the pleasure of taking the government advisor from DESNZ around plant works 2 weeks ago, and one of us was good cop, one of us was bad cop. Prior to the one that says who was the bad cop.